something I've been trying to do lately for like, I would say the last month or so, but I really want to ramp up in the coming weeks, and that's why I'm coming here to present it to all of you, almost as a way to say to myself too, it's time to really get on that, is just making things for no reason more. Artistically, especially. I mean, if you guys do like Excel spreadsheets for work, that could be fun, but I'm talking more here about like scripting, painting, writing, whatever you do, whatever your outlet is. Maybe it's music. I would think it's interesting also, just comment down below. I do know a lot of people who are more artistic watch these. If you are one of those people, comment like what you do down below. I know I have a lot of visual artists who have DM me that I've seen. You guys have awesome work, it's really cool. But I'd like to know, like, do people here like produce? Do you guys make music? Because I think all that stuff is super cool, and I'm very jealous that I can't do it, to be honest. But why have I started thinking about this a lot? Why have I wanted to really do this? I think it comes down to basically just this idea that I had, right? Everybody always says to create more because you're not gonna have passion when you're creating for something, right? Like there's this idea that's really common, like the second you get that job, that dream job as a novelist, you're gonna hate writing novels. Like I've always heard people say that. And as somebody who is in a creative profession and doing creative things for money on the internet, in one way or another, like my whole life, I've never really experienced that. I've always kind of, to be honest, especially in my late teens, I almost had like an elitist point of view on this, where I was like, oh, if you start painting for work and you lose passion in painting, you were just like never built for this. You know, I had that point of view. Of course, over time, I've realized like everyone's just different, you know? And maybe if I did start making music and then get paid for my beats, all the passion would drain from that. And I'm just lucky that that hasn't really happened in other areas, right? But I've kind of started developing this in a different way. Maybe it was 2 days ago was the Paint&Talk where I was talking a lot about leisure time, right? I was talking about how important I think it is to just like, especially if you're an artist, but for all of us to just kind of like chill, build in your own leisure time. I was basically saying, and I fully agree with this, I should, it was only 2 days ago, that like I think it's just as important as doing work. I think if you're just working all the time and not building in any time at all to like genuinely just sit and do nothing, or you know, go on a hike, read a book, travel a little bit, that I think you're missing out on half the picture then, right? I think that's just as important as bringing those experiences to your work. And this kind of goes hand in hand with that, right? Because obviously there are different types of work. Not all work is made equal. Me doing a project where I'm making a comic, right? Let's say that's something I do sometimes. I'm making a comic. That, for myself, is going to be a very different type of work than if I'm doing it for you guys. Let's say I'm posting the comic on my Instagram. It's going to be very, very different work because I'm going to probably be skipping all the steps I don't like. I don't love scanning stuff, so I probably wouldn't scan it for any reason if I was just making it for myself. Whereas if I was going on the Instagram, I'd scan it, I'd touch it up, I'd do all these things, right? So not all work is made equal, and what you put into all the work is also not made equal. Maybe it'd be more personal if I'm just doing a comic for myself. And this is more where I started to be like, wow, I think it's really important to make things for no reason, right? And it's basically because I think to a lot of you, now saying this out loud, I do realize, like, I think to a lot of people, they're gonna like be like, he just realized this, like he just had this conclusion. I think there's almost a point in which like there's leisure time as art. And I don't mean in terms of like, oh, I like to, I like to doodle in my sketchbook to de-stress, to blow off steam. I'm not talking about that. That's obvious, right? And for me, it doesn't apply because I've been able to blow off steam, whether I'm recording this and painting or whether I'm doodling in my sketchbook. So maybe that's how it's worked for a lot of you. Never for me though, right? I'm talking about more in terms of this, right? When I'm doing a comic or writing a book or writing a short story just for myself versus when I'm doing it, knowing there's going to be an audience, I'm almost in some ways taking a directly oppositional stance to efficiency. And this is where I really came to be like, this is important. Because something I've been actively railing against now, in my own mind, is this idea that everything needs to be for an efficient cause. I think this is something that, like, because of how the world is, with, like, you know, our jobs and how schooling works and college and all that, we have this idea that, like, if it's not efficient, if it's not directly going towards something that can either get you profit or some sort of fulfillment or something like that, very directly. I'm not talking like spiritual fulfillment. I'm talking like very direct fulfillment in a material sense. That thing is useless. I think we all kind of have this thought ingrained in us in one way or another, right? Some people it's less than others. Even in myself, would say that I'm like less like that than a lot of people I know. I know some people where it's like, oh my God, calm down for 3 seconds. Like, you do not need to worry about the shareholder value right now. Like, we're all gonna be good, you know? But I've been trying to kind of, I feel like deprogram is like such like, right? Like, he's trying to deprogram his mind. Like, that just sounds awful. But yeah, deprogram my mind from thinking like that. Like, when I get an opportunity to go against that, to be like, okay, I'm going to do something right now that is very inefficient, I try to do that, not because I'm like thinking it's some act of rebellion or something against the system. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm doing it more in a way of like, I want to have both sides of myself, right? I think it's almost important in your own work. If we want to say efficiency is the more important thing here, which, I mean, I think there's an argument that at least in this day and age, it kind of is. I think that in my own work, there is a case to be made that having the side of you that is less efficient can be very valuable, because there are times where on a project or, you know, at work, at school maybe, it's very important to slow down to get something right. And when you're only in the mindset of now, more efficient, that is not going to happen well, you know? And then it's almost like what I'm saying with leisure time. By not doing leisurely work, you're almost missing half of yourself and your own output in what you can do. At least that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it right now. For some reason, I'm slightly out of breath and maybe not conveying these thoughts that well because of it. I don't know why I'm out of breath right now. It's very hot under these lights. That could be it. And I think that, like, doing this leisure work is really good for me, right? Because it's allowed me to kind of wander around in ways that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. You know, when you're thinking about an audience, maybe, or why you're doing something, or how it's gonna look in the final result, that's good, but there's also the whole thing of half the artistic development I've ever had has been as a kid in my sketchbook, just doodling and coming up with, like, wouldn't it be cool if Batman had Flash's ears instead? And then I was like, oh, now I know how to draw a straight line, you know? Without those times, without these things, I would never in a million years be able to get where I am right now. And I mean, there's a certain point at which, like, you're not a kid doodling in a sketchbook anymore, right? But sometimes you need to be. And I think that's why doing leisure work is so important, you know? Being a kid who is very much just, like, not worried about the world around them, not thinking about anything, is great. And creating for yourself is awesome too, because, well, I think there's so many reasons. Outside of, like, what I'm stating here, of, like, I think it's good to kind of untangle this knot in your head that efficiency is the only valuable thing and that everything needs to be for some sort of purpose. Outside of, like, doing that through creative work, I think there's also just a ton of, like, genuine benefits, right? So many ideas come from just, like, messing around in your free time. I know for me, like, ideas for short stories that I've written over the years have totally come from me just, like, watching a YouTube video and sitting and being like, oh, this is really cool. And that's like, oh, I could write a story about that. Oh, now it's this thing, now it's that thing, you know, and it transforms. And I think that's why ideas are so cool. They come out of nowhere. And sometimes you need to be sitting in nowhere creatively to get that idea, you know, like, you got to go fishing. And some people do have more direct ways of doing that, right? Where it's like, their fishing will be through meditation. I know a lot of the time, sort of, you know, metaphorically, fishing for ideas here, not fishing for compliments like I do half these paint and talks, but sort of fishing for ideas can be a process for people. I know some people mood board, maybe they go on Pinterest. For me, that's always happened though through those leisurely creative times. You know, a lot of the times what I like to do is throw on my favorite YouTuber of all time, Mr. Nightmare. Not actually, I don't know if I want to give him that status, but I have been watching him since I was like literally 13. But I'll just throw on some like scary stories I don't really need to pay attention to and doodle on a sketchbook, and I think that's really important. And also what I think is cool too is this idea of like kind of working in the shadows, you know? Oftentimes you don't have an opportunity to come out with an idea fully formed. I know like last year in 2024, out of the 24, 25 videos I released, I kind of had a weird transitional period in at least 5 or 6 of them where I was trying to develop an idea over time that led to the current style that I'm gonna have in this next project and these videos I'm making. But if I had time to sit and just develop that in the shadows on my own, it would look like I'm way cooler than I am. And I think there's a value in that, right? Like we all want to say like there's no value in just being and looking cool, but there is a value and a coolness to when people are like, wow, this guy just came out of nowhere doing that really cool thing. You know, what would be cooler if I was painting and talking with you all, or if like one day you just checked my Instagram and there was the Mona Lisa on it? One of those is definitely a lot cooler than the other. And I think, you know, as much as we want to say there's not a value in that and that like substance is over style and all these things, that you need to be more authentic, Playboi Carti's the biggest artist in the world right now, and I mean, he's just been acting mysterious for 3 years and basically like investing in his own mysteriousness stock until he got there. So yeah, create for yourself. This one was for myself. I wanted to, okay, so this is, I don't know if I want to admit this. Okay, so I came here being like, I'm going to just make something that makes sense to nobody else but myself and try to explain it as an exercise in like, oh, you gotta create for yourself even when there's other people looking, like kind of meta. Like I was like, oh, I'm kind of doing something with that. Not really processing what a fucking loser I would sound like explaining this. So Adam Warlock is one of my favorite comic book characters, and he wears this skull pendant on his cape. If you go search up 90s Infinity Gauntlet Adam Warlock, see the exact version I'm talking about. He wears this exact thing on his cape. I just knocked the mic. And then One Piece is my favorite, one of my favorite things ever. So I was like, what if it was like One Piece and Adam Warlock combined? Wouldn't that be cool? I think it's sick, but like it's just for me. Like it's really just for me. And that's that's what I was trying to do. But like back to the value in looking cool, I just tore that down heavy right there with like going like, guys, I love One Piece and Marvel Comics, and this is what I think is the coolest thing. Go check it out over on the Instagram if you will. Until tomorrow, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This has been Paint Talk episode 85. I'm here every morning painting and talking with you all.